Hey guys, it's YXBA, and today I might be hitting on a bit of a touchy subject. I don't think that it is, but if you are the type that is really sensitive to controversial issues, maybe you want to just skip this one. I want to talk about the issue of having a male version of Link only in the new Zelda game. I think what started this whole situation off is that some people on the internet that considered themselves to be insiders had made it known that there was going to be a playable female lead in the next Zelda game. And that didn't end up happening, so now there has been a bit of an outroar because Nintendo has not gone in this direction. I don't really understand where the criticism comes from on any sort of objective viewpoint. First of all, Nintendo has a long history of putting in female characters dating back to times before there is any sort of a push to do so. Nintendo did so willingly, and they did so because that was what they wanted to do. Nintendo has always been the one company in dedicated gaming that has pursued the female demographic and has been welcoming to that demographic. Of course, the Metroid franchise was one of the first big games that I'm aware of to actually have a female lead. And while they only made it apparent at the end of the game as sort of a surprise that Samus was actually a female, by the time they got to the Nintendo GameCube with Metroid Prime Trilogy, that game makes it very apparent throughout that the main character of the game is female. And I personally don't know any guys out there that are clamoring for a male version of Samus in the next Metroid game. If there are any guys like that, I feel like they should probably have their controllers taken away. One of the other examples early on is probably Mario Bros. 2 on the original Nintendo, where there were playable female characters, and I'm sure there's many other examples, but pretty much any Mario game these days gives you that option, whether it be Mario Party, Mario Kart. Nintendo has a wide range of characters. When you take a look at Pikmin, there are male and female characters in that game. When you take a look at their latest franchise that they launched, Splatoon, there are both male and female characters, and I don't see any bias in the marketing. If anything, you probably see more of the female characters than the male characters. But to me personally, when it comes to a game, the main focus should always be on making the greatest game possible. And when you're talking about a pre-existing franchise like Metroid, like Zelda, there is a nostalgia factor to those games, and that's part of what makes it great. It's part of what makes Star Wars great as well. And so that's a big reason why I think you want to stay with the main star characters that those games have always had. And that's something that's wonderful about video games, is you don't have to rely on an actor to stay fit for the role. You can continue with very much the same aesthetic and the same look of the character for many, many years. So one of my other issues with this whole debate is how people act like it is so easy to just have a female and a male option in every game, because there are games that do it. One of the companies that people cite the most that gives you that flexibility is BioWare with their Dragon Age and their Mass Effect games. And yes, those games do have deep storytelling. However, I have noticed in those games in the past, and I've played hundreds of hours of those franchises, that the romance and the relationship building is actually a lot more rigid than what we saw in Skyward Sword, where there was a romantic element that was clear and apparent. You could basically see it in each other's eyes. And that level of crafting of a story be very, very difficult to do. You'd basically have to create two completely different games to have it so flexible as to capture both male and female options. I remember when I was playing Dragon Age 2, something happened to me that was very, very interesting. One of the side characters that literally from my perspective, there was nothing going on, I was nice to that person, just like I was nice to a lot of other people, and we had some good conversations, and I was just basically trying to advance the story. And then maybe I'm just a clueless guy here, but all of a sudden, I must have said the wrong thing at the wrong time, and boom, we were basically in a love scene together. And the whole thing was mathematical to me. I had just basically given the right response to certain questions as many times as the game needed to trigger that event. But the responses I was giving were not like clear examples of me maybe hitting on that person or buying them drinks and stuff like that. No, it was just the person's family had been killed or something to that effect, and I helped them to avenge the deaths of their family, something that I would have done for any character in the game, whether I wanted there to be a romantic connection or not. So Nintendo has come up with a concept of possibly doing a spin-off Zelda game starring Sheik Zelda, which to me I think is a great idea. They can go into a rotation of Zelda games. Maybe instead of every 4 or 5 years getting a Zelda game, they break up into 2 separate teams and have one Zelda game every 2 years, one starring Link and one starring Zelda. And personally, I would probably be just as excited about either version of that game. And I would be very excited for Nintendo to do something like that, because it would give them a chance to do some different things and break free even more from the conventions of Zelda, while also having a version of Zelda that stays true to the original hero of those games. And I just get really frustrated that there are people out there that think that gamers and nerds are sexist just because sometimes the opinion we give is that we would prefer a certain game or a certain movie to continue with a male lead. There are no gamers out there suggesting that Tomb Raider should have a male option. There are no gamers out there suggesting that Metroid should have a male option. And yeah, there's been a lot of criticism. I'm not going to get into Ghostbusters, my personal opinion on that, but all I know is there's people out there who had all kinds of reasons why they didn't like Ghostbusters, or why they're not excited about the new Ghostbusters movie, like the angry video game nerd, and never once mentioned the fact that there was a female lead as being a problem. And they just got crucified by people who did not like anyone criticizing that movie. However, is anyone bringing up the fact that nerds such as myself and many others have universally praised Star Wars Episode 7, even though that movie has a female lead, and it didn't have a female lead in the past, and nobody has a problem with this? Okay, maybe it's because they actually thought about the fans of the original Star Wars series and made sure that there was plenty of nostalgia and plenty of connection with the previous movies in that genre. Nobody brings this up. I just think there's a double standard out there, and at the end of the day, artists should be free to make the best work of art that they're capable of without having to put a male character in Metroid, without having to put a male character in Tomb Raider, and vice versa. Those are my thoughts. I expect hate mail, but I'm probably too small for anyone to care at this point. If you like this video, please click like, and if you want to hear more from me, please subscribe.